Hello and welcome. My name is Heather. I will be your elemental advisor today. Now, what the actual fuck is that? You might be wondering because it's a new thing that I made. In barest terms, I run a fantasy sci-fi role-playing game that I built specifically to help business owners get better at their sales game, right? Because frankly, there are lots of things that come up through selling and through business and through selling within your business specifically that, cause us to feel a little bit squirmy, a little bit uncertain, a little bit nervous, and a lot ick. And I have found in my travels that the best way to deal with a lot of that is to do something unrelated, but that will bring up those same blocks so that you can address them without feeling like your life is on the line. So that's broadly what I do. What we're doing in this podcast here and in the rest of this podcast series is looking a little closer at these things I call elementals and how they impact on your mindset, on how you approach the different things within your business, and what might be going on with them that is having very real impacts on how your business is going for you that you might not have noticed already. So stick with me. It'll become more clear as we go through it. The barest description of them is this. There are 6 that I have noticed that roughly map onto 6 different profiles of behavior. There are, of course, your earth, air, fire, and water elementals, but I also have a light and dark elemental as part of the set. They work together. Every person has at least one of each, okay? So when we're assigning elemental companions, we're not saying, this is the only one you have. We're saying, hey, this is the one you need to be paying attention to at the moment. And we'll get into reasons for that throughout the series. But the way they interact is usually they have their natural pairs, which in this case is fairly obvious. You have like light and dark as a natural pair. You've got earth and air and fire and water. Where one elemental is really strongly influencing you, the other one in that pair usually is not. Now, sometimes this can be a reasonably good thing, depending on what you're looking for. A lot of the time, it represents a really unhealthy imbalance. And that's where you start to get stuck in different ways. So what we're doing here is asking people questions to figure out which of their elementals is having the strongest negative impact on their life and business, and who they should be listening to instead as they go forward to start addressing that. So since this is the first of the podcast, I don't have a guest on with me, although more usually we will. But for the sake of argument, I was going to take my own quiz here. I'm not editing this in between, by the by, so when I get to my result, it'll be news to me too. Disclaimers, though. Obviously, I have taken my own test before. The first time I took it, the elemental companion I wound up with was a light elemental. And, that fit fairly well for a while. And then I took it again a few months later because you have to make sure these things still work, right? And I understood it a bit better. And I came out with an air elemental companion, which is a totally different pair. So I don't know what it will be. I will be just as shocked as you. Knock on wood, it'll be the same one, but it might not. So I just wanted to make it clear that it's not scripted. I am literally going to read my questions on my quiz, give my answer out loud so that you can hear it too, and then I'll explain how we get to the elemental after. So with all that, we are going to jump in. There are just 2 questions, and here we go. Question 1. when you're procrastinating about selling or moving your business forward, what is the voice in your head saying to you? Brief pause for, oh my God, I hate this question. I made the question. The irony is not lost on me, but this happens. If you hate it too when you're asked, sorry, not sorry. Okay, when I'm procrastinating, well, usually what the voice is saying is I'm not good enough to do whatever the thing is I'm doing. Other people have done it before and probably better. What if I run out of steam partway through and it just sits half done on a shelf somewhere for the rest of my life? What if it doesn't make any difference whatsoever to me or, you know, my business or the world? Usually there's also an element of I don't really believe in what I'm doing. Like I can't take it from where I am now to where I want to be in a direct line. It just doesn't make a lot of logical sense, so I won't do it. But usually it's that little voice that's like, well, who are you to do this thing, right? Who are you to do it when, for example, your website isn't even finished yet? Ow. Who are you to do it when you cannot consistently email your newsletter people? Who are you to do it when, you know, you'll start strong and you'll do things for a few weeks and then you stop doing it and it makes no difference in the end? What makes you think that's going to matter long term? That's what my voice says to me there, which is fun. Okay, and then the next question I have, which is also quite mean for the record, is how do you resolve that? So, okay, right now, when I get all up in my head like that, I'll do one of a few things. The first thing I'll do, and I just learned this today, earlier on, is if I'm feeling like scattered and like nothing matters and why don't I just go back to bed, I will have a coffee. The reason this works, I think, is largely due to the fact that I do have ADHD. I'm in the process of getting diagnosed. We're like this close. I will be stunned if I'm not at this point. But obviously, I am not at all medicated yet. But coffee helps to stimulate some of the things in the brain. So if it's to do with that, I will have my coffee and about 20 minutes later, oh look, wow, I can focus on shit. Yay! So that might be it. The other thing I will do to try and combat it that is less directly related to my brain chemistry is, you know, I'll sit and I'll try and plan it. I have recently just remade my checklist. I was glad to see them, they're over there. For like week level task ones broken into checkboxes. And I have habits that I'm working on forming, so it has its own sheet too. That's what will happen when, you know, I see a demonstrable need for something and I'm having trouble consistently acting on it because the actions themselves don't translate particularly well. So I'll do that. In terms of the worst one, the really tricky part, the who am I to do it? I will either do it as detached from the outcome as I can and then be brave for like 5 seconds so I can click the button that says send or publish or whatever it is, and that will help. Or I will actually walk away for a while and go and do something else. Like taking a walk while listening to an audiobook is usually pretty helpful for me. Or, you know, like stuff like that. I have even been known on my less good days when this is happening to go, okay, and go back to bed and nap. And then after my nap, I'm usually a little more reasonable about life. I also usually kick myself a little bit for needing to nap, which is a whole different thing. But, you know, sometimes it's napping, sometimes it's binging really terrible television. Like, I have specific shows that I keep just for those moments that I don't watch at any other time because they're not objectively good shows. But I like the drama and feeling like my life is more put together than some other people's. So there's that. That's the other thing I will do. And yeah, I think that's about it in terms of the questions. So annoyingly, I think that my elemental has shifted in balance again, which is not uncommon when you have multiple ones that you need to work on, like me. Yeah, so I'll walk you through it. In that first question, when I was talking about, you know, what happens in my brain when I'm procrastinating, a lot of it was about running out of steam partway through, or about the actions and consistency. Now, from that one question on its own, we can look at it and go, okay, well, actions and consistency and firm foundations, like having a website done and your ducks in a row, those are more to do with earth elementals in general, because, you know, therefore you do a lot of your planning, a lot of your structuring, a lot of your foundation work, really, the things that you can put in place to feel like you're building on something solid. That's usually your earth people. And yeah, there is certainly an element of that in there for me. So in real terms, it needs work too, regardless of the actual results outcome here. The earth elemental is less than happy with me at the moment. However, what was more striking in the words I was saying was this feeling of running out of steam, of not being able to put in consistent effort, of things not lining up over the long term, of not being convinced that the actions I was taking would lead to the ultimate goal that I was after. Now those are all water elemental things. Because see, a healthy water elemental will keep you in a sort of harmony and balance with the bigger picture, right? It's the one that says, hey, look, you might just be a drop, but here's how this drop interacts with the entire rest of the ocean, right? So when you're putting things together, that's where you're looking into your future. That's where you're really deciding if it matters. And you can trace them back and forth. If a certain action matters, it matters to the whole. If something up here with your goal really, really matters, the actions to get there matter. And water elementals very much care about the mattering and the why and the, like, to some extent the how, but mostly the why, and that you actually play into your deeper what's going on here, right? So when you get caught up in your why, then it becomes really hard to take forward motion. So from that first question, we're looking at two possible problems here. You've got your earth and you've got your water, which means that our next question will narrow that down a little bit for which one. And, you know, we'll be able to see which is the most pressing. So when I was talking about how I resolved that just now, because the reason I ask this, right, is that generally speaking, humans are quite smart. What we automatically turn to in those moments is probably what we actually need. Sometimes it's a healthy version of what we need. Sometimes it's an unhealthy version of what you need. The recurring theme in what I just said, keeping in mind I've not gone back to listen to it again, but thinking about what I just said, is that when I am feeling that way, I need to turn off the bigger picture thinking so that I can progress. Now, on a healthy day, turning that off means either going for a walk, taking a pause, doing something a little different and then coming back to it afterwards when I feel a little better about life. Or it means, you know, pushing ahead anyway, whether I think that it matters or I'm good enough to do it or not, and then getting to the end of the task. Because let's face it, right, the majority of most tasks are fairly mundane. Once you start the task, you've got the entire middle bit where you're usually just plugging away at something, and then you get to the end and you either complete the last little bit and send it or you don't. So when I was talking about being able to plug away at the middle, when you're plugging away at the middle, you're not looking at the big picture of how it works. You're just getting the thing done. And then at the very end, you sort of just have to take a deep breath and go click. So from that, those are like the healthier ones. The less healthy ones I talked about were going away and napping, which is like the world's biggest reset button for, okay, my brain is hating me right now. Let's just, you know, turn it off and turn it on again. It's a real tech support solution. And I mean, in some cases that actually is a healthy option. I say it's unhealthy because of how I use it, not the action itself. Naps are great. I'm not saying don't nap, obviously. So there's that. And then the other one I had was like stopping and watching mindless television or something along those lines. Sometimes it's even gaming, but those are, again, escape tactics that stop you from thinking about the big picture ad nauseum. So from that, we can say that probably, on balance, the biggest issue I have is with my water elemental just now, which has changed. You'll notice that is not light or air, but fine, that's water. And that means that at the moment, my elemental companion is the fire elemental. Because when you have an elemental that's hurting or exerting too much influence in unhealthy ways, it's their opposite that you need to be listening more to. So in my case, that means that I need to be tuning more into what fire is saying to me, which is usually some version of go, 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 if we're gonna break it down to the bare minimum there. But the way that fire works is with momentum. It's with taking actions, however small, to build up to bigger actions. It's with trusting that you have the right goals in place and that even if the way you are moving to get to those goals isn't optimal, you'll make changes along the way and still get there. So really what the fire elemental teaches you at its base level is to trust in yourself, trust that action is better than no action, trust that it matters what you do, even if it doesn't necessarily connect into the big why automatically. It matters that you are moving and walking and stepping forward, and that momentum is king. Momentum builds drive. Drive helps you maintain momentum, but it's usually the other way around. So being the element of drive and ambition, both of which I do have, but when you're suffering a little bit, it's because you get caught up in what that looks like and how that works and why that works, as opposed to doing the work day in and day out. And it's not drudge work that your fire elemental will advocate for. It is your inspired steps forward. It's making sure that you're in the right place to make changes. It's showing up in the right neighborhoods. It's showing up to work, actually, which, damn, like, I don't know if you can hear it. I'm mildly upset speaking this part because it is true. That is one of the areas where I have been struggling a little bit. So, okay, fair. And from there, we can, you know, look a bit forward and go, well, what needs to change, really? And that's where you sort of look at your own life and habits and what you're trying to achieve, and then look at it through the lens of your business. So, like, I'm not going to bog us down horribly with that, but having made my checklists just recently, like, we're talking 2 days, no, not 2 days ago, my bad, I made them last Wednesday. So they've been in place for 1 week. They're already helping. And yeah, you do just sort of quietly build solutions for things, or loudly if it's loudly that needs to happen. But in my case, it's taking action is the main thing. So yay, that's what mine is. If you want to know how to get your own elemental, I do have a free quiz over at salesrpg.com that will ask you the 2 questions, and the results from there are more or less right. They come out correct a lot of the time. It won't tell you what your other elementals are doing, but it will give you some insight into which pair is most prevalent for you. So that's a really good place to start. If you want to have a bit more of an in-depth look, then I do actually have little elemental sessions where we talk about these things, a lot like what you've just seen on this podcast. And you know, you get this lovely little report afterwards with pictures of the elementals, which, by the way, they're super cute. You want them. And you know, so I have that. The sales page, as of recording right now, is not actually up yet, but if you are interested, do feel free to sign up to my newsletter. You will be one of the first people to know. And finally, if you would like to come on this podcast and we'll work out what your elemental is, then the link is in the description for the sign up form. And please do, because I absolutely love talking to people and it makes a big difference in where you should be focusing. And with that, my peeps, I am going to call this the end of the first episode. Let me know what you thought. Take your own quiz, and if you do take your quiz, tell me what you got, because I'm always fascinated by what people actually get. So until next time, bye.